Welcome back to the Towka Talks podcast. Today I am joined by Marshall Hilaman. He was born and raised in Tallahassee, Florida, played college football at Florida State University before stepping into the world of performance coaching. He went on to serve as a strength coach at Northern Arizona, Boise State, South Carolina, and Ohio University, working with elite athletes across multiple levels. Today, he is the author of the book Spiritual Conditioning, an online strength and conditioning coach who specializes in helping former athletes rebuild their bodies, reclaim their discipline, and root their identity in Christ. Marshall, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the podcast.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, man. So I want to start by getting into your career in football. I live in Texas, and down here in the Bible Belt, Texas is king, obviously, from the Pee Wees all the way up to the professional level. So, what got you into football and kind of walk us through your journey in the sport?
Yeah, no, grew up around it. My brother played, everybody in my family played like it was something that I fell in love with from the jump at about 5 years old. And as I got through middle school, I realized, like, okay, football is my sport, like, no question. So, stuck with it all throughout high school, played in high school, ended up moving to Orlando. I'm from Tallahassee. Ended up moving to Orlando. Finished out high school down there. Didn't have any offers coming out of high school. Like I wanted to play in college. That was a dream of mine. Dream of mine since I was a kid was to play at Florida State. But it was kind of one of those things like it's not going to happen right now. So I at least want to play somewhere. So I played at a small school called Southeastern University, Christian private school in Lakeland, Florida. Didn't really pan out the way I thought it would. Didn't really like the school, and parents ended up going through divorce that year. So I just moved back home to Tallahassee, lived with my grandmother, and I was like, you know what? Like, if I'm going all the way back up to Tallahassee, I'm going to walk on at Florida State and I'm going to play ball. So it was a rough journey when I got up there. I didn't get accepted to the school. I got denied 4 times into the school actually. So it was about a year and a half before I actually fully got accepted. Worked at a gym part time just to have a free place to train. I worked at a bar on the weekends just to make some extra cash. Went to school full time at a community college, and then finally got accepted to Florida State. Had a tryout and dominated. And they pretty much told me like, "Hey, August 26th, you're gonna be your report date. And like, we like you. We want you to be a part of this." And I showed up August 26th. Went to talk to the person I was supposed to talk to, and he looked at me and he said, "I don't know who you are. You got to come back in January." So I was pretty crushed by that opportunity. That was in 2019. And then end of that season, that staff got fired. I'm like, okay, I don't know anybody. How am I going to do this thing? Like, if it doesn't happen this spring, it's never going to happen. I had 2 years left. So every day, starting in 2020, as soon as the office opened at 7 a.m., I was up there knocking on the door. Stayed there for 2 weeks. Finally got somebody to talk to me about, hey, when is there going to be a tryout? They said March 2nd. So I had, 7 or 8 weeks to train for it. And then it pretty much dominated the tryout. I remember I ran back-to-back 4.40s. Kenny Dillingham fell in love with me. That was a part of our relationship. Was he always kind of joked about that. And just that kind of started my career at Florida State. And that first year was the COVID year. It was Mike Norvell's first year. There was so much chaos. I didn't see the field that year, but I knew my time was coming. Fast forward into the off season of 21, just absolutely dominated. I knew that this was going to be a big breakout year for me. Get to the end of spring ball, suffered a concussion, missed the spring games. That was kind of a big deal. Didn't really get good exposure. Summer workouts dominated. Fall camp dominated. Like, my time's coming. My name's going up on the depth chart, especially on special teams, and I'm seeing it every single week. Like, I'm almost there. I'm so close to seeing the field. And first game of the year was Notre Dame. Didn't see the field that game. I kind of knew that going into it. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's there first game. Second game of the year is Jacksonville State. Didn't see the field either. The next day we had a practice, and we were in a tackling drill. I wrapped up, head hit the ground, knocked out. I ended up finishing the practice, but those two concussions at about 4.5, 5 months apart really kind of put me in a bad spot. And then it took me 3 to 4 weeks of just rehab, trying to get in a healthy place, and I just couldn't. I was very stressed out. It was not a good situation, and just talking with the doctors and trainers, it was like, if I come back and it's going to be another 2 to 3 weeks of return to play, you're going to be back for the last 2 games of the season. I'm not going to the NFL. Like I want to do stuff beyond football. Like, is it really worth getting a third concussion just to try to get a few reps on special teams? And so that was a debate that we had, and at the end of the day, it was ultimately just the safest thing, just to hang it up that year and get into coaching. And that's kind of what jump started my coaching career after my playing career.
Was that hard for you mentally to finally walk away from the game that you grew up playing and that you loved? Was that kind of something that you had a really tough time walking away from?
Yeah, for sure. It was less walking away, more of how it ended. Like, I would have loved to have said, you know what, like, I played all these minutes on the field, that I would have done all these great things. I would have been a breakout player and been a star. Like, I would have loved that, like any kid would have loved. But I knew my time was coming to an end. So it was more of like I enjoyed every second. I was a person that I enjoyed every single opportunity. I enjoyed every single workout, every single moment, every single day of being in that facility just because I loved it so much. Like, I got to fulfill my childhood dream of playing ball at Florida State. And that's something that many people will never get to say. And that's something that, I walk out with my head held high of saying that I had that accomplishment, even though it was tough. But at the same time, I knew my time was coming to an end. I was 22 years old, and there's life after football. And as much as I enjoyed it that last year, I knew, like, okay, like it's time to move.
So, what got you into the role of coaching, or kind of talk to us a little bit about the transition from athlete to now coach?
Yeah, so I had no clue what I wanted to do post football. So I couldn't get into any of the programs I wanted to just due to my GPA in undergrad. So I'm a political science major. I was really good at history. I was really good at writing. I was really good at speaking. So I chose that major, and I'm like, I'll run with it. I couldn't do sports management. I couldn't do sports science. I couldn't do any of that stuff. So I was like, yeah, political science all today. Got my piece of paper. But when I had decided to step away from the game that season, it was October of 21. I went up to my defense coordinator, and they were in a staff meeting, and I told the staff, I'm going to step away, but I said, I still want to be a part of this team. What can I do? And he said, you know what, like, take a week, go home, spend time with family, because if you want to work in coaching, he goes, come back next Sunday, I'll have a job for you. So I came back Sunday, and in college football, they post a lot of pictures of videos, but there's guys on the sidelines, and they wear different colors than the teams, and they call in signals. So that was what he put me in that position. And that was what kind of jumpstarted my coaching journey a little bit. And I immediately fell in love with it. And I said, like, I want to be a football coach. Now, everyone made fun of me throughout my college career because they all said, like, Marshall's going to be a strength coach. He loves the weight room. He loves, hard things. He loves lifting weights. And I always said, no, no, no. Like, I want to coach football. Like, I love the weight room, but I also love football. So I thought my path was going to be a football coach. Well, after I graduated December of 21, it was kind of one of those, like, what do I do next? So all of my opportunities to coach football had fallen through. So I texted my strength coach, and I was like, hey, like, can I come see you one day? I stopped by, and we talked a little bit. He goes, you know what? Come work for me until you figure it out. I was like, fine, like, I'll go be a strength intern. Immediately fell in love with it. I realized I didn't have to recruit. I don't have to break down film. I don't have to write scout plays. Like, has me written all over it. So fell in love with strength conditioning, and then I was there for about 4 months before I took my first job at a Northern Arizona University.
So, as far as being a strength coach, though, at like any level, I would say, especially Division 1, do you feel like there is a certain level of intensity in the weight room, and while you're helping the athletes get bigger and stronger to perform at their highest level? Like for you guys, do you feel like the structure is way different compared to high school, middle school, pee wees? Like, is the bar raised to a certain level for the athletes themselves?
Absolutely. It's a completely different just environment in regards to attention to detail, manpower. Like, you got to think in high school, there might be one, two, three, four coaches, and they might not even be strength coach. They might be the position coach that's just there for a summer workout. College, you get there, you got the head strength coach, you got four other assistants, you got 10 interns, you got other, I mean, it's chaos, but it's controlled. but you also have such a detailed workout and explicit intention as to why we are training athletes a certain way. And that thing kind of intrigued me at that collegiate level because the detail and the standard was so much higher. But not only just the weights portion, it was also the standard and detail of how you come into the building, how you show up to the workout, how you break down the workout, how you clean the weight room. There's so many things at that level that were so elite. And so it was operated at such a high standard that I really liked, that I still appreciate so much, and it's been instilled in me since I joined the business. The difference is typically night and day, depending on the school and the coach.
Do you feel like though being in that position yourself, like in the weight room as an athlete, definitely helped you further along as far as being the actual coach and being in charge of these guys? Do you think being there, done that, like definitely helped you personally?
Oh, absolutely. One, just for a relationship standpoint, having been an athlete and having coaches coach me and understanding the importance of that relationship that we had, that inspired me, and that put me in a position that when I was once a coach, like I want to be that same coach that they were to me. And there's just a big relationship factor of guys that played at that level and guys that coached at that level. And I think some of the best coaches are the ones that did play at that level. Now, you don't have to be. I've met amazing coaches who haven't played that sport, but they still have great relationships. But it does help a tremendous amount in regards to relationship factor and also performance factor. I mean, people think that being a strength coach, all you do is do heavy squats, heavy bench press, heavy deadlifts, and you scream and grunt. But there's a performance intangible to it too. You have speed development, you have conditioning, you have mobility, you have joint focus, you have soft tissue work, you have recovery. There's so many things that, in regards to a change of direction sport such as football, that goes into it. That's more than just using a barbell and a squat rack.
What can actually help younger football players, Marshall, that are either in middle school or especially high school that want to eventually play NAIA, NCAA, as far as what they can prepare for? Because obviously everything you just mentioned, I would probably guess a lot of younger kids don't do on the regular basis, not only in football but in any sport. So what can they do now to help prepare them for the future? Because that's obviously a heavy workload in and of itself, but is there something they can start doing now that will help them in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in short, is being in the weight room. I think a lot of kids, especially other sports outside of football, baseball, basketball, they're afraid of heavy weights. They're afraid of getting too big. They're afraid of bulky, when in reality, being in the weight room, having your muscles and joints loaded, being in uncomfortable positions, getting stronger, putting on mass, these are all great things that I think you should have. Another side of that is, if you once play at that level, learn what it means to be in a weight room like that. You're going to spend more time in the weight room than you are on the field. You're going to spend more time with the strength staff than you are your position coach. And just being in that environment, being in the weight room, learning how to use your body, learning what movements to do, being comfortable on a back squat, being comfortable learning how to clean, being comfortable learning how to bench press. All of these things are important. Learning how to sprint, using change of direction drills, doing conditioning drills. It's more than just your sport. And if you want to be really successful at your sport, you have to do the small details outside of that. And I think just learning some of those things in specific, something as movements of a back squat, learning how to power clean, asking questions. Don't be afraid to approach people who understand performance, whether it be high school or college. Ask them questions. Those are big things to be ready for. I've seen so many athletes that when they come to college, they've they have no idea how to do a power clean. They have no idea how to do a back squat, and that's no um, shot at them, because a lot of kids just don't have the resources. But if you say you don't have the resources, don't be afraid to ask, because everybody's willing to help you get you there.
I feel like strength and conditioning work, especially when it comes to the weight room, is just so underestimated in our society. I feel like more and more people are catching on to the benefits of it, not just from a physical standpoint, but a mental. Do you feel like outside of your coaching role, you definitely focus on that in your own personal life when it comes to making sure that your body and your mind are staying strong and being able to perform at a certain level that helps you in your job?
Yeah, absolutely. I focus a lot on the mental capacity as well. Like, I tell anybody that I've ever coached, or anybody that is in my online program, I will never ask you to do something that I haven't personally done. And a lot of things that require a lot of success are going to be hard. It's going to require a lot of mental resiliency. And a lot of that is just being consistent, showing up to do the work. Showing up is the hardest part. Doing the workout's easier than actually showing up. So you're going to have you're going to have more days where you don't want to do it than you are the fact that you're motivated to do it. And so I'm heavy on performing the workout before I ask you to do it. One, so I know how it feels. But two, I think there's also a respect order as well. It's if an athlete sees you going through some type of loathing, some type of mental resiliency, I think there's also respect for that. It's not an ego thing. And I also, the coach that I looked up to, I know they did hard things, but I trusted them with how they coached me because I'm like, okay, if they can push through the things they're going through, I know I can easily push through this.
So I want to switch gears for a second. On top of what everything you just said from the mental standpoint, you are very much a strong Christian from what I can tell based on how you speak, and then obviously your profile as well, and what you help guys and what people in their coaching and when it comes to their identity and their relationship with Christ. Can you talk to us a little bit about growing up, what your relationship with God was like, and kind of where you are today when it comes to your faith?
Yeah, my faith is the number one most important thing to me in my life. I mean, weights don't matter, money doesn't matter. My faith is number one. It forever will be. I grew up in the Christian home, was introduced to Christ at a young age. I was saved at a young age. I was baptized at a young age. I was in the Christian school my whole life. Was always a very firm and strong believer. And then when college came around and I was on my own, I jumped off the deep end. I had a lot of things happen in life that were out of my control. And in a sense, I did kind of run from church and I ran from God a little bit just because that was a sense of coping for me. And me being 19, 20, just being out there on my own and not having the support that I once had really kind of threw a wrench in my life. And I got sucked into the world and everything that comes with it. And it, for about a year and a half, 2 years was tough. And then going into 2020, I remember I was looking to get back in the church. I knew I was on the right path. And when I was like January 2nd or 3rd, I was approached by a kid who's still a very good friend of mine to this day. And he invited me to church. And that kind of put me back on the right track. And, 2020, I started going to church again. 2021, I started to really dive deep into my faith. 2022 was probably like one of the strongest. 2021, 2022 were at a young age, I was extremely strong in my faith. And then 23 came around, 2023, and I had accepted a job at Boise State. And I was 24, 25 years old, and kind of had that first taste of significance, popularity in all aspects of life. I had a logo on my chest. I had an industry that was kind of blowing my name up. I had just a lot of pride and ego that was driven into me. And that was when my faith kind of shifted from a servant mentality to a selfish mentality. In that, I mean, God really humbled me going into 24, and I'm glad that that happened. And through some of those circumstances and things, it put me in a new position, a new season to have nothing but have everything because I had Christ. And I experienced both. I experienced having everything and not really being fulfilled in Christ to having nothing and stripped of everything, but I had everything, so I did have Christ. And that really jump started a lot of my faith to where it is now and being as strong as I am and as detailed as I am and as public as I am on my socials as well.
Do you feel like that a lot of Christians today in society are either not as all in on it, or just like half in, half out? Like, do you feel like there's a disconnect in the church or in somebody's relationship with God, when not in a judgmental way, but do you feel like there's something that is keeping them from submitting themselves whole, like all in, basically, like what you just said, like humbly walking before the Lord and saying, Lord, I can't do this. I need your help. I'm tired of walking selfishly. Do you feel like there's a lot of people that feel that way or feel like they're disconnected from God in some way, even though they may have grown up in the church?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had heard this quote a couple of years ago. And it says, if you only do what you have to do, you'll always have to do what you are told to do. And I think today's generation, I mean, doesn't matter age, but just the world we're living in, especially in the Christian church, Christians do just the bare minimum. which is showing up to church and maybe reading their Bible a couple days a week. But in reality, is that enough? If we're called to be believers, we are called daily to pick up our cross, to die to self, to humbly serve, to be a light for Christ. Just going to church doesn't do anything. It's like when you go to eat something. If you only ate on Sundays, you would starve. You would die. And I think a lot of people, they only eat on Sundays and their spirit is absolutely starving. Their spirit is weak. Their spirit is not conditioned. Their spirit is just crumbling because they only go to church on Sunday and they think that's enough. They think somebody telling them the gospel is going to be enough when in reality, it's a relationship. Do you read your word? Are you involved with group? Do you serve in the church? Do you serve other people? And I think just with especially social media, there's comparison, there's gossip, there's excuses, and it's honestly kind of an epidemic in today's church. Now, there is a lot of revival. I will give like America that right now, especially there's a lot of revival going on, but there's always more to be done. And I think people don't strive to do more. They just do what they have to do. So people always have to tell them to go the extra mile, but then they get frustrated and hurt because they have to get pushed more. They have to die to self. They have to pick up their cross. They have to do those extra things that we're actually called to do.
What advice would you give to young Christian athletes that are afraid or in a ways ashamed of their faith? Because obviously the gospel and Jesus, like if you profess any of those in our society today, I feel like you're just like you're cursed, you're frowned upon, you're in some ways like basically like crucified in a way. But for the kids, the guys or girls who are watching who know the Lord, want to serve Him, want to honor Him in everything they do, what advice would you give to them that are watching right now?
Yeah, somebody asked me this question, and they said, if you weren't sold out for Christ, you'll be bought out for something else. And that was something that convicted me when I was in those positions, in a lot of positions as these other kids of, you have the logo, you have what you've dreamed of, but you're not sold out for Christ. And I tell these to a lot of kids, especially who are younger. I have seen and had it all that people would look at me and say, "Wow, as a man, you've done it all in life. You have done it all. You've partied with the best of them. You've lived in the coolest cities. You've had everything. Like you've done it all." And I tell people it's the most miserable life. And I didn't have half or a quarter of what some of these guys in the NFL have, or what some of these multimillionaires have. I didn't even have a quarter of that. I couldn't even touch that. But if I could give just realistic advice, is be sold out for Christ. Don't be ashamed. This small little piece that we live here on earth means nothing compared to the eternity we're going to have with Christ. Like you could be the only Bible that people ever read. Like you got to think about that. People don't just naturally go crack open the Bible, especially if they're not introduced to it. And if you're going to be a believer and a follower of Christ, you could be the one limiting factor that brings somebody along with you. And you also got to understand, this life isn't about us. Nothing that we do is about us. It is simply about glorifying Christ and leading others to Him. And, when God gives you a talent, when God gives you a gift, steward it well for the service of His kingdom and the service of others, not for the selfish ambition of things that you could accomplish for your own sake.
I love that so much. Marshall, before we sign out, I just want to ask, can you speak to somebody right now who may be on the fence about God, may not have grown up with the best lifestyle or in the best circumstances, may have been, cursing and pointing their finger at God, asking why did these things happen to me? Can you please just speak to somebody today who's on the fence of giving up or getting back up?
Mhm. It is the most rewarding life you'll ever live. And even though sometimes it doesn't feel like that, sometimes it doesn't seem like that, what God has for you is on the other side of obedience. And obedience is tough because it's going to require us giving up things that we want most. But the blessing is always on the other side. And if you cling into Him, and if you lean on Him, and if you say, Lord, I'm done, I surrender, it is the most peaceful, joyful, rewarding thing you will ever do. The amount of joy that comes from it is unbelievable. I've never met somebody who went all in for Christ and regretted it. It is truly a heart changing, life changing thing that will not only impact you, but impact so many people around you. And God wants to use you in so many significant ways. And He will do so much more with your obedience than you can your own control. But you have to be willing to trust that.
I love that. Well, Marshall, I want to thank you again for joining me on this podcast episode today. Guys, if you enjoyed our conversation, please give it a huge thumbs up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. I will leave all of Marshall's information in the description so you can connect and follow him. And I wish you all the best in your journey, brother. Thank you again so much for everything that you do. And I wish you the utmost success in your future endeavors. And until next time, we'll see you guys on the other side.
Thank you, guys.